I'm a little under the weather today, which is funny because that phrase makes absolutely zero sense. I'm not under anything. The weather isn't on top of me, and yet you know exactly what I mean. That's the power of an idiom, and also why idiom is one letter away from idiot. Hello, fellow ishies. My name is Dina, and this is Correctish English, where we learn why English is messy, why it drives some people crazy, and why it actually makes sense after all. So what is an idiom? An idiom is a phrase that makes sense to native speakers. It makes no sense when translated literally, and it can't be understood just by knowing the words. If someone learning English hears spill the beans, foot the bill, break the ice, they're understandably confused because idioms do not mean what they ought to mean. Where does the word idiom come from? Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Is idiom related to idiot? Yes, but not the way you think. Both come from the Greek root idio, meaning one's own, personal, private, or one's own personal affairs. It's an interest in one's own personal affairs. From this root, we also get idiom, one's own way of speaking, or idiosyncrasy, one's own personal traits. In ancient Greece, an idiotus was simply a private individual or someone not involved in public office. There was no insult implied. None. So how did idiot become an insult? Let's go back to the Romans. The Romans borrowed the word idiota, and things changed because they believed that public life developed intelligence, and refusing public office meant you lacked ability. So idiota slowly gained a stigma, someone unfit for public responsibility. Do you see any modern day parallels to the word idiota? By the time the word entered English, writers were confused. Some used the Greek meaning, and some used the Roman meaning, but others pushed it even further. Eventually, idiot became what it means today. Someone deficient in reasoning or judgment. But idiom never made that journey. An idiom is simply a language that belongs to a group. Okay. Why idioms confuse everyone else is because idioms are culturally specific, historically layered, and socially learned. They can't be decoded logically. That's why idioms are one of the hardest parts of learning English as a second language, or any language, actually. They break the rules in two ways. Semantically, which is meaning, they don't mean what the words suggest. And syntactically, which is the grammar, is they're fixed. You can't swap words or tense freely. You can't say tow the bucket instead of kick the bucket, footed the bills, and that sounds just really strange. Okay? So how do idioms evolve? Most idioms follow this path. They have a literal meaning, they have a metaphorical meaning, and then eventually they have a fully idiomatic meaning. So over time, the original image fades, but the phrase stays. An example, under the weather. This is a nautical phrase. When sailors fell ill, they actually went below the deck, literally placing themselves under harsh weather. Over time, it stopped being nautical and just meant feeling unwell, or sounding unwell. Okay. Here's another example. I've caught myself using this recently. And my friend understood me recently. I said, you can't foot the bill for this. And I thought, where did that come from? In the 1800s, totals were written at the foot of a ledger, so whoever paid the total footed the bill, and the metaphor stuck. The accounting practice didn't. How did idioms spread before the internet? And this is key, and it's part 2 of this series. Idioms spread through migration, trade, newspaper, radio, movies, shared national experiences, and groups of people in similar professions. Think about the military. They have a certain language that they use. They understand all the acronyms. Or farming or agriculture, for example. There are a lot of examples in the Bible of Jesus talking to people in farming and agricultural terms that they would have understood at the time because that's what their culture was. That's why older generations sound different and old movies feel like a time capsule of language. Which brings us to generational idioms. Every generation creates and inherits idioms. Some fade, some stick, some get mocked, and every generation swears their language makes more sense. Spoiler, it doesn't. So no, using idioms doesn't make you an idiot. It means you belong to a group, you share a cultural shorthand, and you're fluent in something deeper than grammar. So this is part 1 of a 3-part series on idioms, where they come from, how they spread, and why generations fight about them. So if you've ever wondered why English sounds ridiculous, you're in the right place. If you like this content, please don't forget to like and subscribe.